Hi, and welcome to COMM5706TeamTelopea's social innovation strategy focusing on co-housing for older people. Australia has been facing a housing crisis for many years, but perhaps the most vulnerable and urgent cohort needing attention are older people, particularly older single women and those who are renting. As 5.5 million baby boomers move into older age, their needs, including housing, may change. Of those 15% who are renting, they face an uncertain future of tenure insecurity and rising rental costs. For those who do own property, lack of downsizing options and restrictions put in place by state and federal governments may disincentivize moving. This can have knock-on effects to the larger housing market, as larger family-friendly properties are not released to market for young families. There is also the rising issue of social isolation, as 30% of older people live alone and are not able to get out into the community due to location, transport connections, health issues, or as a result of traumatic life events. Early on in the project, we developed some rich pictures to explore and understand the conditions and options for housing relating to older people, and to help us understand the lenses through which we interpreted the issue. It struck us that housing for older people was a complex problem, and in our very early research, the co-housing project kept appearing. To ensure we did not attempt to address too broad an issue, we focused in on co-housing as it appeared to be a very successful model that could address many of the issues faced by older people, as well as catering to their wants and needs. Co-housing is an option that has been widely rolled out internationally with much success and has particularly gained traction with older people. It's a form of community living that contains a mix of private and communal spaces, combining the autonomy of private dwellings with the advantages of community living. Generally, co-housing communities have a say in the design of the development and often self-govern. Co-housing began in Denmark when families became tired of the single-family dwelling options and a social movement sparked the construction of bofællesskabs, or living communities. Since then, co-housing has developed a foothold across much of Europe and North America, but has failed to make an impact in Australia. The potential benefits for older people are huge. The opportunities to consolidate services, thereby increasing the opportunity to age in place, the potential to improve affordability, both in the delivery of housing and services, and finally, the social interaction by design, addressing the growing issue of social isolation. The problem is, then, why has this product not gained a foothold in Australia? We have been growing in terms of unaffordability, high levels of social isolation, and a looming affordability crisis for older people's housing, as well as a huge shortage of appropriately designed dwellings. Co-housing is a potential solution to all of these issues, but has so far been unable to gain significant traction in Australia.
We spent some time structuring the development of our design strategy and based our strategy on the Hasso-Plattner model for design thinking. We began by trying to empathize with stakeholders. These stakeholders included future and potential users, as well as co-housing practitioners. From undertaking this process, we were then able to revisit our problem issue and further try to define the root causes of the problem and identify the problems we want to solve. From there, we can develop potential solutions and then prototype to enable us to test our solutions. We interviewed 4 potential future service users. All service users were over 65 and owned their own property. 2 service users were single and 2 were a couple. 3 of the service users live in Australia and 1 lives in the UK. All service users are residing in the family home that they are now under-occupying. We used semi-structured interview style and together developed a script so we were consistent in our exploration. From the interviews, we developed story worlds for our future service users to help us to develop a deeper understanding of the issue through the thoughts and experiences of our future users. We uncovered some interesting assumptions about people's identification as an older person, as well as about their levels of future planning for housing arrangements. Our exploration interviews with practitioners were achieved due to the determination and perseverance of Kylie, who managed to secure interviews with Dr. Elizabeth Chong, a co-housing researcher from WA, founders of co-housing projects in WA and New South Wales, and practitioners from the city of Fremantle. We also interviewed Robin Fletcher, a social housing practitioner from New South Wales, who has over a decade of experience working with older people in social housing, both in the UK and Australia. We used contextual curiosity as the design method. Our exploration with potential service users helped us to further define our problem issues and the themes surrounding the problem issue. We found that generally older people did not want to think about the future and their housing options. Unsurprisingly, connections to family and nearby community were significant for all our interviewees, which raised questions for our group about how to design and advocate for housing options that minimize disruption and provide a sense of security and continuity. All service users were aware of elements of their current circumstances that were not conducive to aging in place, such as a lack of access to public transport, stairs, excessive upkeep requirements of large dwellings and gardens, and risks of social isolation in living alone. However, all expressed a preference to remain in their current circumstances. One service user summed up the feelings of all very articulately by saying, "We all want safety, security, accessibility, and company." In terms of their thoughts about co-housing, they were either against the concept or open to the idea but skeptical. They raised the issue of equity, that it is not an option unless you have capital, fears and concerns about getting on with the community, having to leave existing friends and community, concerns about lack of privacy, and the importance of location, that is, being close to public transport, amenities, and engaging with the wider community. Our exploration with practitioners revealed the issues from their perspective as to why co-housing has been so successful internationally but has not exploded in Australia. They described the financial limitations to the model, that at the moment it is currently only an option for those with sufficient capital to invest or those able to secure a mortgage. There are apparently issues around title and concerns about how the families of older people view the model and how it will impact on their inheritance. Practitioners also described those who had attempted to get such projects off the ground and gave up due to the complexities and long timelines. There is a brand issue as well, as the product is seen to have similarities to that of a hippie commune. There are also concerns with the risk of community homogenization if the location and balance was not right. They expressed frustration at the lack of a national housing policy and a potential solution to many of the issues, as it would lead the way to key enablers being put in place. Issues around title could be addressed using strata title, and using an existing property could change costs from millions to hundreds of thousands. The practitioners were united in their urge for government to be involved, that without government, at an individual or grassroots level, co-housing could not take hold.
With a clearer idea of the roots of our problem issue, we moved into the ideation stage of the strategy. Initially, we brainstormed together and recorded any and every idea we had, crazy, good, bad, and ugly. We started by discussing the many areas that were impacting the lack of take-up for co-housing in Australia. We discussed at length the potential innovative idea of encouraging homeowners to develop co-housing on their existing land using granny flats, and how we could encourage them to do so using various planning mechanisms, tax incentives, and marketing of the product. Someone raised a comment made by one of the practitioners, which was that co-housing would never be able to grow or expand from a grassroots level, that it needed government support and collaborative effort from multiple stakeholders. It was then we started to discuss the importance of advocacy, and all the dots started to join together. We considered that what is missing in Australia is a peak body for co-housing, supported by cross-sector members. With an advocacy group, we could address the issues by bringing everyone together, both at national, state, and local level, as well as helping those interested to communicate and learn about the product. In summary, we channeled our ideas into 6 key components of an integrated solution. Reframe the problem to remove confusion and risk from the more complicated co-housing models, redefining the brand to address the thoughts, ideas, and fears of our market and more appropriately empathise with our customer, form an advocacy body to educate, raise awareness, and to drive the economy of scale required to shift the dial to community uptake, create a government incentive and financial product similar to the First Home Buyers Grant to help encourage customers out of their traditional comfort zone, and finally conduct further research to see if we can learn from the tipping point in other sharing economies from elsewhere. With a clear solution to test, we turned back to our service users and practitioners to prototype our solution. And then, to the prototype phase, we developed a rich picture to attempt to illustrate our proposed advocacy body and sent this to practitioners and potential service users, along with a description of each of the innovations. Feedback was requested via SurveyMonkey. The results were in favour of co-housing as a viable option in the Australian marketplace. All respondents thought that co-housing should be offered as a housing option, and removal of the barriers to uptake was indeed a problem worth solving. Overwhelmingly, respondents felt that the lack of community understanding of the concept, risks and benefits was the most significant barrier to co-housing uptake, followed by a lack of financial incentives. Respondents considered that the proposed integrated solution was positive, had excellent social value, and above average monetary value. Respondents also felt the integrated solution was innovative. Our respondents also gave us some great feedback. Interestingly, we learnt that Co-Housing Australia had in the past been an existing body that some people were now trying to reinvigorate. Political support seems to be key. To conclude, co-housing has an economic, financial and social value proposition in Australia. The lack of community understanding of the concept, benefits and risks is the most significant barrier to its uptake. An integrated solution of education, advocacy, incentives and legislative enablers is likely to be required if co-housing can be used to help solve housing affordability and isolation in ageing challenges in Australia. We'd like to say our special thanks to all of our participants in this study. We liaised with 4 potential service users and 7 practitioners in this field from around Australia. We were quite overwhelmed by the generosity of these passionate people with their time and advice, and are deeply grateful for their help.